Pac Man is an obsession of mine, ever since I first played it way back on the Atari 5200. In fact, when I decided to try my hand at restoring a classic arcade game, the first thing I did was find an old gutted Miss Pac Man to work with. I've added several other machines to what is now growing into a small arcade, and the latest is another Pac Man game, but not one with its roots in the arcade. No, this game came out for the GameCube console in 2003, specifically to showcase the connectivity between that system and its portable sibling, the Game Boy Advance. The game, of course, is Pac Man Vs. In case you are unfamiliar, Pac Man Vs. puts a simple twist on the classic formula by having human players take control of the ghosts, turning traditional Pac Man into a competitive multiplayer battle. For a console game, it requires a decent amount of setup, so I thought assembling all the components into one cabinet would make a nice addition to my home arcade. The game has been released a handful of ways. First, as a standalone disc given away for free at retailers. Second, as a pack-in disc included with Pac Man World 2 and a few other Namco GameCube games. And finally, a few years later, a slightly modified version was included on Namco Museum DS, giving the game new life on the dual-screen successor to the Game Boy Advance. Nintendo themselves reused some gameplay ideas from Pac Man Vs. in Mario Chase on Nintendo Land for the Wii U, with a similar asymmetrical multiplayer experience. So how did I make the Pac Man Vs. arcade machine? Well, a few years ago at an arcade auction, I bought a particularly unfun gumball or rubber ball dispensing machine called Funny Ball for about $25. I took it apart and noticed that it was a great shaped cabinet for a game with external controls like a Guitar Hero or, of course, Pac Man Vs. The design of the machine is fairly simple. Its heart is a standard Nintendo GameCube, connected to the controls on the front through a single hole in the cabinet, with some strain relief so that nothing ever gets unplugged. The controllers are original indigo blue GameCube controllers, which when unused sit in some wall clips that are manufactured by Laboratory 424 and are available online. And of course, the player controlling Pac Man uses an original indigo Game Boy Advance, modified with an LED booklight, since that model was made before the GBA had a backlit screen. It was important to use an old-style GBA rather than like a newer SP, so it would match the on-screen instructions. A small audio amp drives a mono signal to a single 4-inch speaker installed below the marquee. The display is a 19-inch Emerson CRT television, connected to the GameCube via S-Video, and directly mounted to the cabinet to save room. Power comes from an extension cord that I spliced a power switch into. In the bottom of the cabinet, I had room for a backup TV and GameCube. The only major alteration to the cabinet itself was to the upper back door to accommodate the depth of the television. For the cabinet's side art, I simply enlarged a screenshot of the original arcade game to give a retro feel and represent the action on the Game Boy Advance screen. I took a similar approach to the marquee, but wanted to be sure to add another classic character, Mario. After all, he is the game's announcer.
Ready? Go!
I also made some small instruction cards to help first-time players get the hang of things. So why make a Pac Man Vs. cabinet? Well, first of all, the game is incredibly fun and unique, which is to be expected when the creator of Mario, Shigeru Miyamoto, puts his own spin on Toru Iwatani's classic Pac Man formula. And also, Pac Man Vs. is a bit of a forgotten game, as it was only one of a handful of titles to use the Game Boy Advance link cable, which never really caught on. So this cabinet is a way to remember a great game that time has passed by. If you have any questions or comments, you can find me around the internet as Well-Fed Games. And as always, thanks to the Build Your Own Arcade Controls forum, where you can find all sorts of amazing arcade-related projects. Thanks for watching.